Hey, how you doing? Today is February the 2nd of 23. That means it's Groundhog's Day. And as you can see, I have the Groundhog Day cake right here. Because what's a holiday or a celebration without a piece of cake? So, I think I'm going to have a piece of that with my coffee. Yeah. Chocolate cake with peanut butter icing. That's hard to beat. Yeah. We'll just move him out of our way there. Now, a little bit of coffee. That's always good. Yeah. That's one of my favorites is the chocolate cake. And you can't go wrong with peanut butter icing. So I got up early this morning to check the prediction for the weather forecast. Because you know, the job of the groundhog is forecast the weather. So the groundhog is going to predict if we have an early spring or if he sees his shadow, 6 more weeks of winter. Well, turns out this year, 6 more weeks of winter. Punxsutawney Phil saw his shadow. Yeah. You know, the most famous groundhog is, of course, Punxsutawney Phil. He started around 1887 or something, making his predictions on Groundhog Day. And I don't know if you know it or not, but Punxsutawney Phil has never been wrong. Never been wrong. Sometimes the members of the inner circle who are communicating with Punxsutawney Phil, they translate the wrong thing that Punxsutawney Phil said. So it gets lost in translation once in a while, but the groundhog is always right. Yeah, since 1887. Punxsutawney Phil, by the way, is about 137 years old now. I'm certain he's also the oldest groundhog alive today. Because every summer they feed him the elixir of life at a festival during the summertime. And that keeps him alive for another 7 years in theory, but they're doing this every year, so he's good to go. And I must say, for 137 years old, the groundhog doesn't look a day past 6 years. Now, this tradition of Groundhog Day, of course, goes way back. And I believe in Germany, they used to have a badger, or I guess any badger that was in the woods. And they would say if the badger came out of hibernation and saw its shadow and retreated back into the burrow, there would be 6 more weeks of winter. But evidently, the German people had a lot of badgers, in Germany. Now, when the people immigrated to the States from Germany, especially, that tradition of Groundhog Day came along with them. But they rapidly discovered there's not too many badgers up here in the northern part of the continent. So what there was a lot of was groundhogs. I mean, there's still a lot of groundhogs. You can't go driving anywhere around the woods or farmland for very long that you don't see a groundhog. They're almost everywhere today. And so they picked the groundhog to become their weather forecasting animal. And I think actually in maybe France and England and some of the other places, way back, they had the bear as an animal. So they said, if the bear, sees its shadow or not, that's how they would predict the weather, for the next 6 weeks. Got to have some kind of animal to predict the weather. So it happens, February the 2nd falls between basically winter and spring. So the solstice and the equinox and stuff determines the dates, and I think it's around December 21st is the one for the winter, and the one for the spring is like March 21st or 22nd. But February the 2nd falls in between those two. So what it really boils down to is you're in the middle of winter. Let's have a holiday. So what better thing could people think of to do in the middle of winter other than throw a big party and watch an animal like a groundhog determine if there's going to be last winter or 6 more weeks of winter. So at these groundhog celebrations, it's always like a big party. And of course, that's why we're having groundhog cake. And then later in the afternoon, we'll sit around and talk about the groundhog and whether we were happy with his prediction or not, and have a couple of beers and laugh about it. Because it's really just a lighthearted way to break up the winter. So there's other groundhogs as well, and then really there's other animals that different people in different states or different locations use to predict the weather in a similar way. I think maybe Texas even has like an armadillo or something like that. Maybe they don't have too many groundhogs in Texas. That could be why. But you always hear about it in Pennsylvania. Groundhog's Day is sort of a big thing. And especially because, being in the north, like I said, it starts getting cold definitely by the end of December and going into January. And by February 2nd, it's about time for a break from all the monotony of the cold weather and the rain and snow and sleet and everything. So we celebrate Groundhog Day. And because all these different areas have their own animals and stuff, it's almost like sports teams, every local place. Like Canada, I think, has 3 different groundhogs, and they're not near each other. One's like down in the south central, and one's like on the eastern side, and one's on the western side. But they've got their own designated groundhog to predict the weather also. But yeah, I remember though, even as a kid, it was a big deal with my parents and my family and stuff celebrating Groundhog's Day. And back then, my grandmother would make the Groundhog's Day cake. But it's always been a big celebration. And like I said, in the middle of winter, you don't need much of a reason to start celebrating. Even weather forecasting with a groundhog will do the trick. But that coffee's about empty. So take care of yourself. I'll catch you next time. See ya.